Hey everyone, geophysicist Stefan Burns here. There is a big risk of there being a high magnitude earthquake striking California in the immediate near future, this being a magnitude 6 or greater event, even potentially going to magnitude 7, though I think magnitude 6 to 6.5 is the most likely range, and I think it's more likely to occur in Northern California if it does versus Central or Southern California, specifically looking at the San Francisco Bay Area. And there are a lot of reasons for this. The primary one is the fact that we just had a magnitude 7 earthquake up in the Yukon, border of Alaska and Canada, with a ton of aftershocks, hundreds and hundreds of earthquakes. And just a couple days ago, we had a magnitude 6.5 that struck Mexico near the city of Acapulco. Well, California is directly in between the two, and we often see earthquakes follow that sort of progression where they will fill in the gaps. Also, with that Mexico earthquake, there was antipodal earthquake activity with that occurring on the mid-Indian ridge in between the Australasian and Antarctic plate. That is a geologic spreading center, and on the other side of the globe, we have the subduction zone off the coast of Mexico. So there was this clear back and forth sequence with that 6.5 quake in Mexico. Well, we just had an antipodal earthquake for the San Francisco Bay Area, a magnitude 5.7, which is quite large for a mid-ocean ridge on the border of the African plate and also the Antarctic plate. So fairly close by to those other antipodal quakes, and well, that's because California and Mexico are close together. So that is not a good sign. And then there are a bunch of other factors which we will go into. But to start off, just really quickly to mention it, because this is very rare, we just had a doomsday fish wash up off the coast of Monterey. And these are known as doomsday fish because of Japanese folklore and legend associating these oarfish washing up with high magnitude earthquakes and tsunamis. So basically really powerful natural disasters. And they hang out really deep at depth. And the idea is that there's some sort of change to the Earth that's occurring in the deep oceans, potentially based off of changing electric field or electromagnetic signals. We know that sometimes before, during, and after high magnitude earthquakes, we get these sort of electromagnetic signals that are generated and released. And so if these fish are very sensitive to them, which makes sense, that would drive them to the surface and they die once they're at the surface. So you don't see them there normally because, well, they're going to die if they go to the surface. So on December 30th of 2025, scuba diver Ted Judah was out in Monterey Bay, clear waters, and he saw an oarfish. So this is very, very rare, and I take these very seriously because back in May and June of 2025, right before the magnitude 8.8 megaquake that struck off the coast of Kamchatka, Russia, one of the biggest earthquakes ever observed, only behind 5 magnitude 9 plus events that occurred in the past 125 years, we saw tons of oarfish washing up around the oceans in that area. Australia, New Zealand, India, other locations. And so there is something to this folklore. And case in point, we can look back to 2024 when 2 doomsday fish washed up in California. And look at the date there. That is November 15th for this article by SF Gate. For the second time in less than 4 months, an oarfish washed ashore in San Diego. And so this occurs every now and then. There have been oarfish that wash up every now and then in California, San Diego, Monterey, etc. But again, the date for this is November 15th, 2024. So going 4 months before then up to that moment. And well, let us look at this. If you remember, we had a magnitude 7 earthquake offshore Cape Mendocino at the Triple Junction on the 5th of December, 2024. Here is the map for that. So we can see that this was a big earthquake. We can put on our tectonic faults, our US faults, and you see the San Andreas here go up, and then where it starts to bend and you get this triple junction between plates, we had this big magnitude 7. So those oarfish in 2024 technically we're a temporal precursor to this high magnitude earthquake, which occurred in the global sense just nearby, right? That's not that far away. And also for 2025 with the magnitude 8.8 megaquake, we also saw these oarfish washing up all around the globe. But there are many other data points to get into, but that is definitely one that I consider. I think there's a lot of wisdom in these legends and folklore, and that we should be working off of our historic record and the clues that our ancestors left us to better understand what is happening now and what could occur going forward. But there is an elevated risk for sure going forward for the next 2 months for California. I'm going to break it all down for you as to why in this video. So to begin, let's look at our recent earthquake activity around the west coast of the United States for the past 30 days, because this forecast does include Oregon and Washington. We could see activity there, perhaps at the Cascadia Fault. Doesn't have to be a magnitude 9 megaquake. It could be quite a bit lower, magnitude 6, magnitude 7, though I think California is the most likely location for a high magnitude event to occur in the future, and you'll see why as we go through the video. But we're going to start with the high magnitude events that have occurred around California. We see 3 big ones right there. This magnitude 7 Hubbard Glacier earthquake on the 6th of December being a big event with hundreds of earthquakes in the aftershock swarm. You see this 6.5 there that occurred near Acapulco just recently. That was on January 2nd. And then we see this 6.2 there that in Peru that occurred on the 28th of December. So we see a very clear progression where we have a big earthquake here, big earthquake there, big earthquake there. This is the Eastern Pacific Ring of Fire, and we're just completely missing activity here in and around California. You also see quite a lot of magnitude 5 earthquakes here further to the south, filling in this area as well, but look at the deficiency here. So it just really looks like, based off of this, that this should be filled in. You can't base an earthquake forecast off of any one single factor, but you start to add them together and it makes you start to wonder, okay, maybe something is coming. So this is the first factor of many that we are going to look at. I want to show you another one now. We just had an antipodal quake for the San Francisco Bay Area. And these antipodal quakes aren't usually exactly antipodal. So you have to give them a little bit of a range, but it can't be completely way off differently than, pretty much an opposite vector of the globe. But here we see this 5.7 Prince Edward Islands region earthquake. That's the spreading center in between the African plate and the Antarctic plate. And that's a pretty big earthquake for a spreading center. We see magnitude 5.5s, magnitude 6s. We've even seen up to magnitude 6.5 in greater earthquakes on spreading centers, but it's really rare to see something beyond 6.5. So 5.7 is notable. And here is the San Francisco Bay Area. That is the exact antipode vector for the San Francisco Bay Area. So look at the position with the southern part of Africa there, the Cape of Good Hope, and also Madagascar. And let us go back here. Look at that. It is in the exact same location as the antipode. So that is quite significant. And this is coming after an antipodal sequence that we just had. So if we go here, check this out. Here we have the Mexico magnitude 6.5 antipodal sequence. So our first earthquake was a magnitude 6.0, and actually there was a magnitude 4.9 and magnitude 5 that occurred before that, but the magnitude 6 was definitely like the big event on that mid-ocean ridge. Again, magnitude 6 earthquakes there are rare. That was on the 1st of January. That's all universal time. Then we get this almost exact antipodal quake to Mexico, magnitude 6.5. I put out an alert that there could be an earthquake in Mexico, magnitude 5 or greater, before this magnitude 6 occurred. And when the magnitude 6 occurred, that upgraded it to a magnitude 6 or greater for Mexico. This occurred on the 2nd of January. So you see the quick 1, 2, and then back on the 3rd with a 5.9, exact same location. The epicenter is identical. So this is a very clear sign that this sort of vertical stress dynamic exists in the Earth and that it affects earthquake activity, which is very interesting because we don't have a good real explanation for this as to why yet, but that is something I'm working on. It may have to do with the rotational angular velocity of the Earth and the torque and more. But I'm still working on a reason, an idea as to why these vertical stress dynamics work. But you can think of like a bike wheel. When a spoke breaks, often the other side's going to break as well. So here we see this Prince Edward Island earthquake right there. This is the spreading center. So you have the plates actually being generated and spreading apart. But if you look over here, here we see our interesting activity. So we had this 5.0 right there, and then it went over to this 5.0 here, and then we had this magnitude 6, and here's our 5.9. So that's the antipodal activity. So a very clear ping pong back and forth, and you have to pay attention to this because we've been seeing this in 2025. So we can look at our data for 2025 to see a very clear example of that. And you'll see how this all blends together as we get further into the video, because we're going to be talking about planetary geometry as well. We have some very strong planetary alignments occurring right now, just like we did back during the time period around the magnitude 8.8 megaquake. It's actually the same planetary alignment that's active now as was then. And we see this antipodal action with this magnitude 8.8 quake here. So here's our magnitude 8.8 earthquake off the coast of Kamchatka, strongest earthquake of 2025 and one of the strongest ever observed. And there was, foreshock activity before this. A magnitude 7.3 went off about 10 days before. And there were some other warning signs that we were due for a megaquake, a magnitude 8 or greater earthquake, because we hadn't had one for 4 years. We typically get one magnitude 8 or greater earthquake every year. So we've accurately forecasted this on the channel 3 days in advance, and then also a few months in advance with some generalized, there should be a megaquake coming soon, global forecast. But if we go here to our oldest earthquakes for 2025, I want us to scroll down and we are going to get to May, okay? This is all earthquakes magnitude 5.5 or greater if you can't tell. And on May 2nd, we had our first quake that is worth watching. So we have to go over to Drake Passage here, and you'll see this 7.4 that hit. So that is a big earthquake. Well, pretty close to the antipode for that location is Kamchatka. So Kamchatka and Drake Passage are almost exactly antipodal. They're not exactly antipodal. Again, it's not an exact vector. There maybe even is a little bit of deflection around the inner core that helps account for that slight deviation from exact. But regardless, this effectively is antipodal for Kamchatka. So we had the 7.4 there in May, and then that 8.8 was July 29th. So you can see how it goes, earthquake there, then to the other side of the globe, we get the big earthquake. And this is not a small earthquake. If you're taking tiny magnitude 4s, you can paint any sort of pattern or picture. But if you are looking only at the highest magnitude events and you're seeing patterns emerge, then that tells you something. So these are some of the biggest earthquakes of 2025. 7.4 for Drake Passage, the 8.8, that is the largest. So then after July 29th, the megaquake, we go back here, we will see that we had more powerful earthquakes. We had this 7.4, and then we can go and see that we had in August a 7.5. So now less than a month after that megaquake in Kamchatka, it pings back to the Drake Passage. That is August. If we go up here, you will see that after that quake occurred in August, we had a magnitude 7.4 aftershock for Kamchatka. So now it's bing, 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 and it goes back again because we had another high magnitude earthquake down here, Drake Passage. After that, that was the 7.6, the largest of the whole sequence for Drake Passage, and that was on the 10th of October. So we've been having antipodal quake activity there very clearly. We've had a lot of other examples of antipodal quake activity with some of the quakes here in the Banda Sea. Of course, we already mentioned the Mexico quakes. So this is a clear rhythm and trend that you can use to forecast quake activity. It's not going to give you a guaranteed, accurate hit every single time, but it's definitely a very important variable to watch, and one of the most important. I would say the antipodal quake off the coast of South America, that 5.7 right here, is definitely a data point to consider. And then you add in the recent quake activity in these locations in the month prior, and that is definitely putting California at a greater risk. But there are other factors. Let us explore them. Another important factor to be aware of as it relates to earthquake activity are changes to the Schumann resonances, Earth's naturally resonant energy fields. When we see enhancements in the Schumann resonances at specific frequencies, that often precedes high magnitude earthquakes. And sometimes these signals can be global. Sometimes they're only picked up closer to the earthquake epicenter. They can occur before, during, and even after high magnitude earthquakes. Well, here we have our Schumann resonances 0 to 40 hertz vertical electric field spectrogram. So they're measuring the vibrations that are basically oscillating along that electric current going vertically from the ground surface up to the ionosphere using a T antenna. This is out of Tomsk, Russia, thanks to the space observing system. And what we see is this high amplitude power signal right there stretching across many, many days back on the 3rd of January. This is all universal time +7, so you can convert this all to your local time. But this is in the 32 to 37 hertz zone, and mode 5 of the Schumann resonances is at 33 hertz. So this is anomalous because it's not exactly at the main resonant mode in that frequency band, which is right here, mode 5. But we see the first mode of the Schumann resonances, 7.8 hertz right here. That's the foundational mode. 70% of the energy is there. We have 14 hertz, 20 hertz, 26 hertz, 33, 39. And these resonant energy fields, which are always pulsating at a higher power than background frequencies, are fed by lightning strikes. Because there's about 50 lightning strikes occurring every single second. You also have effects from the ionosphere creating Schumann resonances. Our brains create them. Our hearts create Schumann resonances. They're Earth's naturally resonant energy frequencies. So when there's a change to the resonance, that indicates that there could be a change to some of the geologic and geophysical forces active on our planet. Now, what's so interesting about this is if you know how to read this data, you can see that this is very significant because they show the data normally going from 0 to 32 hertz, and then they apply a filter to the data going from 32 hertz to 40 hertz, which reduces the decibels on it. So the gain goes down. I think they reduced the gain by like 15. And so that's why the bottom of this spectrogram here, going from 32 hertz to 40 hertz, always looks so dim in power compared to the higher frequencies. Here's our power legend there. So these cold colors are low power, and once you get up into the reds and the whites, it is high power. So you see that these green colors are more moderate, but you see that they're elevated over these blue colors for these non-resonant frequencies. So for this to show up with a high power signal, even after they apply that reduction in the gain to the data, means that that's a very high power signal. And it's not exactly at resonant frequencies. And the pre-earthquake signal range is typically 25, 26 hertz, which is mode 4, though it can range from 15 to 35. So it is still in there, but this is quite bizarre. By itself, it doesn't mean that an earthquake is due to hit California imminently, but you add it into other factors if they exist, and it makes everything worth paying attention to a little bit more. Now, another very important factor to add into this is the fact that we have a very significant planetary alignment that is unfolding as we speak. It's active right now. We see two of the planets in that planetary alignment thanks to our coronagraph view, our view of the sun, which puts a disk over the sun, and including disk, so we can see the solar wind and solar storms that come off of the sun. When we do that, we can also see the planets. And so here we see Venus on the other side of the sun performing a superior conjunction with the sun. That goes exact on the 6th of January. Well, what's this right there? That is Mars, also on the other side of the sun, performing its superior conjunction, though it'll be just a couple days behind the superior conjunction of Venus. And because Mars is going this way, Venus is going that way, well, they are also going to meet up and do a conjunction themselves. So that is quite significant, but there's more to that planetary alignment than just what Venus and Mars are doing. We can look at it right here with our solar system scope application, and here is the planetary alignment that's active. We see Mars, Venus, Mercury is also right there as well. There's Earth, there's Jupiter. So we have Jupiter opposition on the 10th of January. Earth was just at its closest to the sun on the 3rd of January, so about 0.985 astronomical units away. The average distance is 1. And we see this synodic cycle here with Mars and Venus a once every 6.6 year cycle, or about 2,338 days. So this is a very significant planetary alignment. Last time we saw this planetary alignment was 1936. They do not occur that often. They are quite rare. But there is more to this than just that. We also have Neptune and Saturn here performing their great conjunction. And they did their great conjunction in reference to the sun on December 13th. I think it was the 12th to 13th of December. And they will do it late February with the Earth. We have harmonic aspects also at play. Pluto and Uranus, 60 degrees to both these planets, 120 degrees to each other. So the entire solar system right now is arranged geometrically with very precise angles, alignments, and harmonic aspects. This is not common, and it's definitely something to consider because we see high magnitude earthquakes often hitting during these precise planetary alignments. Let's go back in time. So we will go back to around the time of the megaquake. Okay, that was again July 29th, 2025, magnitude 8.5. And back in July, or mid-July, is when we nearly had an exact conjunction between Neptune and Saturn here as viewed from Earth geocentrically. This is only 13 arc minutes apart, and there's 360 degrees in a circle. An arc minute is a 1/60th division of a degree. So very, very, very close to being exactly conjunct back in July. They will do that conjunction, as I said earlier, in February of 2026. Okay, so this is mid-July. Look at the planetary geometry that started forming. Here it is on the 29th of July. We see Mars, Earth, Saturn, and Neptune in a line, and that really went exact a little bit later in August, as you see right there. Very nice alignment in early August, but that alignment was still very active when that megaquake occurred. And this harmonic aspect with Uranus and Pluto, with these two outer planets, was all still in effect at that time. This is a minor grand trine configuration. So the last time we had the Neptune-Saturn conjunction, which was July of 2025, because there's differential orbital velocities between the planets. So Earth is rotating around, so it makes it look like they're going conjunct, and then there may be a triple conjunction sequence. This time we only get one exact conjunction, that's in February 2026, but the almost went conjunct in July. We had the magnitude 8.8 megaquake. Now we have that coming up again. If we go forward here, we'll see this in February. We see that geocentrically they are conjunct right there, about the 20th, 22nd of February, and this is very important. Let's add on another layer, okay? So that in and of itself is like, okay, we should pay attention. And we can go further back in time to see how this planetary geometry is important, because back in 1989, we had the Loma Prieta earthquake, a magnitude 6.9. That was specifically on October 18th. And so what was happening back in 1989? Well, let's find out. We can grab Saturn here and drag him back to 1989. And so we'll see this slowly appear right here. And look at that. There is another Saturn-Neptune conjunction that is occurring at the same time, specifically on the 13th of November is when that went really exact. We can get that right here. The 13th of November was when that was exact. You see that Venus was also in that planetary geometry. Uranus just nearby. Very significant planetary alignment. We also have the dwarf planet Ceres participating. There were 2 conjunctions prior to that. This was a triple conjunction sequence. There was also one on March 3rd and also June 24th of 1989. This was the final conjunction, just like we have the one and only final conjunction coming up in February. So, and we had the Loma Prieta quake occur just before that on the 18th of October. So there's too many parallels now to ignore, effectively. When you look at this, this is a one-off, an n equals 1. Maybe there's other examples going further back in time that I'm unaware of, but the fact that we had a big, sizable earthquake at 6.9 when we had this planetary alignment in the sky, the same one that we have right now, gives me pause. And then we have the doomsday fish washing up in Monterey Bay just recently. We have this antipodal earthquake activity. We have the earthquake clustering on both sides of the west coast of the United States. And well, it definitely makes you think. So we can look at the earthquake activity for 1989 to add even more context into this, because here we see this 6.9 Loma Prieta. You will also notice that if we go down here, we see that there was a big earthquake, almost the same location in Mexico. Now this was back in April of 1989, but if we're talking in a geologic sense, these time rhythms don't need to be exactly one after another, 2 days, 3 days later. This was right outside Acapulco, just like what occurred April 25th, 1989. That's exactly the location that we just had that magnitude 6.5. We see that we also had big earthquake activity in Alaska, also a magnitude 7. Remember, we just had the magnitude 7 Hubbard Glacier earthquake in December of 2025, this being a magnitude 7. Further off from the Yukon, but still in this general region, that was September 4th. And if we go over to other parts of the Ring of Fire, you see that Japan also had very similar activity to what's happening right now. So they had a 7.4. We just recently had a 7.6. And then you see the 6.9. We had a 6.8. There's a 6.4. We also had a 6.4. We also had 6.7 and 6.6 earthquakes. They had a 6.4 back in 1989, 6.2, 6.2. So and it's the same location too. This is zone 1 of the 2 that we've been really looking at for this recent activity. So you see these parallels across time. That's the point here, is that right now there are a lot of parallels between the earthquake activity that was occurring in 1989 as to right now, and we also have the same planetary alignments in the night sky with Saturn and Neptune. I don't think you can just toss that out the window. And then you add in that Mars, Venus, Mercury, Sun, Earth, Jupiter alignment, which is this whole other factor as well, which is very significant. Jupiter being the planet with the biggest gravitational field in our solar system, not that far away at 5 astronomical units. It also has the strongest electromagnetic field outside of the sun. The Earth has a very strong magnetic field. They're on the same side. Venus, Mars, Mercury on the other side of the sun. It's just a little bit too much to be comfortable, let's say. So if you live in the San Francisco Bay Area, I recommend that you be aware, be prepared, have a plan in place, food and water for at least 3 days, ideally more. And you also know where you're going to go if an earthquake strikes. If you're not in a safe building, it's easy to get out, then maybe get out, but you want to find cover, protect yourself in some way. Most everyone that's lived in California should have gone through these drills, but if you're someone that moved there, then maybe this is something you need to brush up on. This doomsday fish washing up is something I take very seriously, and that's kind of like the cherry on top of all of this, because we saw them washing up back in 2025 before the mega quake. We saw them washing up in 2024 before the magnitude 7 earthquake, and it's just really too much to ignore. Now, where could this occur? I think all of California, it's possible. I think Northern California is more likely than Southern California for some of the reasons I've listed in this video. These are the 4 main faults that it could go on outside the San Andreas. It could be the San Andreas, but we also have the Rogers Creek Fault, Green Valley, Hayward, Calaveras. I'm thinking the Calaveras Fault could be the one that ruptures and gives us a magnitude 6 to 6.5. The possible magnitude here that the US geoscientists have shown is 6.8. That's the same for the Hayward Fault. Last big earthquake there was 1868. A lot of these faults are way overdue. Look at the years that have elapsed on some of these faults. Green Valley, 1609. That could be a magnitude 7.1. Rogers Creek, 1745. That could be a magnitude 7.1. If you look at the biggest earthquakes that have occurred in Northern California from the 21st century, it's the magnitude 6 in Napa, and then it's 2 magnitude 5+ quakes on the Calaveras Fault. And then you have to go further afield to get bigger earthquakes than that. So we've only had 2 magnitude 5+ earthquakes and a magnitude 6 earthquake in 26 years now in the 21st century for the Bay Area. With all that said, this is just my earthquake forecast for California. I don't issue them unless I think there's something that actually could occur. We have a fairly good track record here with my work and what I've posted here on the channel on my Twitter X account. You can check that all out. I'll put some links in the video description if you want to explore into this more. I really hope nothing happens. I'm from California, grew up in the Bay Area, love it there. But when the signs are flashing, I can't just ignore that and say, oh, it's not going to happen. And I would want everyone to be prepared for that. So we've been having earthquake swarming in San Ramon. That's something that does occur there. We've made videos on that, but it doesn't mean it's helping the situation. So just in general, now with all these factors converging, I think it's really important to be watching California very carefully. And if there is a high magnitude earthquake that occurs there, magnitude 6 or greater, even up to magnitude 7, it could be greater than that. We could get up to a magnitude 8, but I think 6 to 6.5 is the most likely range. That would then complete that stress relief that has been building across the Eastern Pacific Ring of Fire. So it makes sense in that regard. So if we see more antipodal quake activity for California, I will be posting that to my X account. That's at Stefan Burns Geo. I post updates there in between videos if you really want to stay up to date, that when there's big stuff to report on, I'm your guy. So thank you all so much for watching. Again, I've been your host, Stefan Burns. Smash that like button to help the channel grow. Please subscribe to stay up to date with everything that's happening with the Earth energetically, earthquakes, volcanoes, geomagnetic storms, severe weather. We also examine, as we did in this video, factors beyond just the Earth: solar activity, space weather, planetary resonances and alignments, interstellar and cosmic forces, and so much more. Thank you all so much. Wishing each and every single one of you well. Please take care of yourselves. Have a great 2026. I'll see you all in the next video.